What if giant, flavorful tomatoes had nothing to do with store-bought fertilizers? The Amish have cracked the code. No chemicals, just nature's power. Crushed eggshells, wood ash, and compost turn soil into a nutrient goldmine. Deep planting and companion plants, that's their secret weapon. So why do most people still rely on chemicals? What else are we missing? Here's what the Amish do differently to grow enormous mouth-watering tomatoes without chemicals. The surprising secret behind Amish farming success. In a world where modern farming is practically fueled by synthetic chemicals, there exists a group of people who've cracked the code to growing massive, mouth-watering tomatoes without a single drop of fertilizer or pesticide. The Amish, living in their quiet, horse-drawn worlds, are out here pulling 4-pound tomatoes off the vine like it's the easiest thing in the world. No fancy lab-created seeds, no high-tech irrigation systems, just centuries of wisdom. Soil that's treated like gold, and a way of life that hasn't changed much since the 1700s. At first glance, their farms might seem almost too simple to be effective. No industrial tractors, no fluorescent-lit greenhouses, no buzzing drones monitoring crops from above. And yet these small, family-run farms consistently produce some of the healthiest, most robust crops imaginable. While modern agriculture leans heavily on artificial boosters to force plants to grow faster and bigger, the Amish rely on patience, natural cycles, and techniques passed down through generations. But the real question is, how? What's their secret? It all starts with the soil. For the Amish, soil isn't just dirt, it's a living, breathing foundation that determines everything. While large-scale farms drench their fields in synthetic fertilizers that deplete the land over time, Amish farmers treat their soil like a delicate ecosystem. They rotate crops religiously, never planting the same thing in the same spot 2 years in a row. This isn't just tradition, it's science. Certain crops like corn drain the soil of nitrogen, while others like beans restore it. By keeping this natural balance in check, they don't need chemical fertilizers at all. And if that wasn't impressive enough, they also rely on composting, using everything from manure to plant leftovers to enrich the land instead of depleting it. Then there's their natural approach to pest control. While conventional farms are practically drowning in pesticides, Amish farmers use an entirely different strategy, one that doesn't poison the environment or compromise the quality of their crops. They plant strategically, pairing certain crops together in a way that repels pests naturally. Tomatoes grown next to marigolds, for example, are far less likely to suffer from destructive nematodes. Ladybugs and praying mantises are welcomed into the fields, acting as tiny winged guardians that keep harmful insects in check. Instead of fighting nature, the Amish work with it, creating an ecosystem where everything supports everything else. But here's where things get even more fascinating. While the rest of the world is obsessed with high-tech irrigation systems and automated watering schedules, the Amish take a completely different approach. They rely on age-old techniques like drip irrigation and rainwater collection, ensuring their plants get exactly the amount of water they need. No more, no less. Mulching is another key strategy, where straw, leaves, or grass clippings are spread around the plants to lock in moisture, keep the soil cool, and prevent weeds from taking over. It's a method that requires patience, but the payoff is undeniable. These techniques are proof that sustainability isn't some new age concept. The Amish have been practicing low-impact, environmentally friendly farming for centuries, long before terms like carbon footprint or organic became trendy. Their methods are so effective that agricultural researchers have studied their farms, trying to understand how they manage to achieve such incredible yields with minimal environmental impact. And yet, despite their deep connection to tradition, the Amish aren't completely closed off to innovation. In some communities, solar panels have quietly made an appearance, providing energy in a way that aligns with their values of self-sufficiency. They're selective about what technology they allow into their lives, but when something truly enhances their way of farming without disrupting their principles, they make room for it. At a time when industrial farming is facing serious challenges, soil degradation, climate change, and the growing concern over food quality, the Amish way of farming stands as proof to what's possible when people prioritize balance over shortcuts. Their ability to grow massive, nutrient-rich tomatoes without relying on modern chemicals isn't just impressive, it's a wake-up call. Maybe the future of farming isn't about going forward with more technology. Maybe it's about looking back, learning from the past, and working with nature instead of against it. And that brings us to the real mystery. How do Amish farmers manage to grow tomatoes that put supermarket varieties to shame? What's behind these massive, flavorful fruits that seem almost too good to be true? The answer isn't just in their soil, it's in their centuries-old farming techniques perfected over generations. The richest soil for Amish tomatoes. The Amish have cracked the code to soil so rich, so full of life, that it turns ordinary tomatoes into something extraordinary. This isn't just dirt, it's a carefully nurtured ecosystem teeming with microbes, organic matter, and nutrients that industrial farming has long forgotten. By using compost, crop rotation, and natural fertilizers, they create soil that doesn't just grow plants, but sustains them. No synthetic chemicals, no shortcuts, just a deep understanding of nature's balance, perfected over generations. So, how do the Amish, without modern machinery or high-tech fertilizers, consistently grow tomatoes that rival anything you'll find in the fanciest organic stores? It all starts beneath your feet, deep in the soil. Amish farmers don't see soil as just dirt. To them, it's alive, a living, breathing system that, when treated with respect, gives back in ways modern agriculture has long since stopped believing in. Their methods aren't written in books or taught in agricultural schools. They're passed down through generations, from one set of calloused hands to another, refined through trial, error, and an unwavering commitment to letting nature do what it does best. They don't rely on synthetic fertilizers or pesticides to force growth. Instead, they build their soil from the ground up, literally. Decayed leaves, barn manure, straw, and compost piles that have been carefully tended for months all come together to create the kind of soil most gardeners can only dream about. The Amish have a rule: if the compost still smells like manure, it's not ready. Only when it's fully broken down, dark, and rich enough to crumble between your fingers does it go into the garden. This isn't some rushed, slap-it-together process. It takes time, and that's the key to everything they do: time. While industrial farms are constantly churning out crops as fast as possible, pushing land to its limits, Amish farmers take a different approach: slow, steady, and deeply intentional. And then there's crop rotation, something modern farms often neglect. The Amish never plant tomatoes in the same spot year after year. One season it's tomatoes, the next it's corn, then hay, then grains. This careful cycle prevents the soil from being stripped of nutrients and naturally keeps pests and diseases in check. Unlike conventional farms that drown their fields in chemical treatments, Amish growers let the land heal itself. The result? Soil so full of organic matter that it holds moisture like a sponge, feeding those enormous tomato plants without constant watering. It's not just what they put into the soil, but what they don't take out. Amish farms have some of the healthiest populations of earthworms you'll ever find. These tiny, tireless workers burrow through the soil, aerating it and leaving behind nutrient-rich castings. A single acre of Amish farmland can contain up to 1 million earthworms, each one quietly improving the soil, making it the perfect home for those legendary tomato plants. Tillage is another place where the Amish take a different approach. Modern farms plow deep and often, breaking up the soil structure and disrupting the delicate fungal networks that help plants absorb nutrients. The Amish, on the other hand, use minimal tillage. They disturb only the top layer, preserving the underground world of microbes, fungi, and worms that make their soil so fertile. It's a delicate balance. Just enough tilling to prepare the land, but never so much that it destroys what nature has already perfected. Then comes one of their most important tricks: mulching. Instead of letting bare soil bake under the summer sun, they cover it with thick layers of straw, hay, or even shredded newspaper. This keeps moisture in, prevents weeds from taking over, and slowly decomposes, feeding the soil as it breaks down. On the hottest days, the difference is staggering. Soil under mulch stays up to 20 degrees cooler than bare dirt. While other farmers are desperately watering their parched crops, Amish tomato plants are thriving, their roots nestled in cool, moist earth. Even the soil's pH balance is handled with old-world wisdom. Instead of reaching for commercial lime or sulfur, Amish farmers use wood ash to raise pH or pine needles to lower it. These natural amendments work gradually, avoiding the harsh shocks that chemical treatments can cause. Everything they do is about balance, never forcing, never rushing, just working with nature instead of against it. And it's not just about the soil. The Amish approach to growing tomatoes is deeply personal. They don't see their gardens as fields of crops, but as living, breathing spaces that require attention, observation, and care. They walk their gardens daily, inspecting each plant for signs of stress or disease. There's no reliance on automated irrigation systems or industrial sprayers. Instead, they know their land so well that they can sense when it needs water just by the feel of the air or the way the leaves respond to the morning sun. It's this hands-on, almost meditative approach that makes their tomatoes stand out. Each plant is pruned and trained by hand, ensuring that energy is directed toward fruit production rather than excess foliage. They don't just let tomatoes grow however they please, they shape them, guiding their vines, supporting their branches, making sure that every bit of energy goes into producing the best possible fruit. The results? Tomatoes so flavorful, so perfectly textured that they make grocery store produce taste like water by comparison. It's no wonder that when Amish farmers bring their harvest to market, customers come from miles away just to get their hands on a few. These aren't just tomatoes, they're a symbol of what food is supposed to be. Real, nutrient-rich, and grown with the kind of care that's becoming increasingly rare in today's fast-paced world. But perhaps the most striking thing about Amish tomato farming isn't just the end product, it's the philosophy behind it. In a world obsessed with convenience, speed, and technology, the Amish remind us that sometimes the best way forward is actually to look back, to slow down, to trust in nature's rhythms rather than trying to control them. Their tomatoes are proof that bigger, better, and more flavorful doesn't require fancy equipment or chemical shortcuts. It requires patience. It requires respect for the land. And most importantly, it requires the kind of hands-on, time-honored knowledge that only comes from truly living in harmony with the earth. So while modern farms continue chasing higher yields with artificial means, the Amish keep doing what they've always done, growing food the way it was meant to be grown. And in the end, that might just be the real secret to their success. The soil is just the beginning, though. The Amish don't just plant any tomato, they have specific traits they look for, ones that make all the difference in taste, texture, and resilience. Because when you rely on nature rather than chemicals, the right tomato variety isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. How the Amish choose the perfect tomatoes for giant harvests. There's something almost mythical about the way the Amish grow their tomatoes. These aren't the sad, flavorless supermarket tomatoes that barely pass as food. No, these are giants, massive, bursting with flavor and grown with techniques that have been passed down for generations. But what makes these tomatoes so extraordinary? It's not just the soil or the seeds or the fact that they refuse to rely on modern shortcuts. It's something deeper, an old-world mastery of nature that turns a simple fruit into a masterpiece. At the heart of it all is seed selection, an art form the Amish have perfected over centuries. They don't just grab any old seed packet from a store. Each fall, the best tomatoes, those with the richest flavors, the most vibrant colors, and the most impressive sizes, are set aside, not to be eaten but to be preserved. Varieties with naturally large fruit like Brandywine, German Johnson, or Mortgage Lifter form the basis for many Amish giant tomato projects. Their seeds are carefully extracted, dried, and stored, ready to be replanted next season. And here's where it gets fascinating. This isn't just about picking the biggest tomato. Year after year, generation after generation, they choose the ones that adapt best to their local conditions. Over time, these seeds become something entirely unique, fine-tuned to thrive in the soil, climate, and unpredictable weather of their specific region. This method, called mass selection, isn't just effective, it's scientifically proven. Studies show that plants grown from saved seeds can develop genetic adaptations in just a few generations. While modern gardeners rush to buy fresh seeds every year, Amish farmers know that their carefully preserved varieties are far superior. Their tomatoes aren't just big, they're built to withstand droughts, fight off pests, and keep producing even when the weather takes a nasty turn. But it's not just about genetics. The Amish also have a deep understanding of how to work with nature rather than against it. While many farmers struggle when temperatures climb above 90 degrees, when most commercial tomato plants stop producing, the Amish have developed varieties that can handle the heat. Through generations of careful selection, their tomatoes keep growing even when the summer sun is relentless. And then there's cross-pollination, nature's own unpredictable experiment. Tomatoes mostly self-pollinate, but occasionally bees and other insects transfer pollen between different plants. Most commercial farmers try to control this, seeing it as a problem. But the Amish? They see an opportunity. If a cross-pollinated plant produces something interesting, maybe a tomato with an even richer flavor or one that's more resistant to disease, it's saved, planted again, and observed. Sometimes these accidents lead to entirely new varieties, ones that are perfectly suited to their land. The genetic diversity in Amish gardens is staggering. While the commercial seed industry has whittled down options to just a handful of widely sold varieties, a single Amish community might be growing dozens of different types, each with its own unique strengths. This diversity acts as a safety net. If one variety struggles due to disease or an unusually cold summer, another might thrive. It's a level of resilience modern agriculture could only dream of. And unlike industrial farms, the Amish have no interest in genetically modified organisms. Not because of marketing, not because of trends, but because their entire way of farming is built on the belief that nature knows best. They don't tamper with the DNA of their plants in a lab. They observe, select, and nurture. It's an old-fashioned, time-consuming process, but it works. Even their seed storage methods are as traditional as they come. No refrigerators, no vacuum-sealed packets, just simple paper envelopes or cloth bags stored in cool, dry places. And here's the kicker. Some of these seeds have remained viable for decades. It's proof that sometimes the simplest methods are the most effective. But perhaps the most fascinating part of Amish tomato growing isn't even the plants themselves, it's the way they share them. After each harvest, Amish families gather to exchange seeds, not just trading physical seeds, but also knowledge. One farmer might have a tomato that's particularly resistant to drought, while another has one that stands up to blight. By swapping seeds, they don't just expand their genetic diversity, they strengthen their entire community. It's ironic, really. In an age where people are obsessed with innovation and speed, the Amish are proving that slow, patient, traditional farming still outperforms many modern methods. Their tomatoes aren't bred for mass production or long-distance shipping, they're bred for taste, resilience, and sustainability. And that's what makes them special. Every single bite isn't just a taste of summer, it's a taste of history, of generations of farmers who understood that working with nature, not against it, is the key to growing something truly remarkable. But selecting the perfect seeds is only half the battle. What good is the best tomato seed if it's planted wrong? How do the Amish ensure their tomatoes don't just grow but thrive? Their method isn't about rushing or relying on artificial shortcuts, it's about working with nature, creating the perfect conditions for a plant to reach its full potential. The Amish formula for planting tomatoes. Growing a tomato that turns heads isn't just about planting a seed and hoping for the best. It's a craft, an obsession, and for the Amish, it's practically a way of life. These aren't just any tomatoes, they're giants, the kind that make grocery store varieties look like underfed cherry tomatoes. And the secret? It all starts with how they're planted. Forget tractors and automated planters. Amish tomato farming is hands-on, literally. On planting day, there's no deafening roar of machines, just the rhythmic clip-clop of horse-drawn plows and the quiet hum of family members working together. It's a method passed down through generations, refined through trial, error, and an almost supernatural understanding of the land. Timing for them isn't dictated by a date on the calendar. It's about reading the earth itself. They don't need weather apps to tell them when it's time. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. The blooming of certain wildflowers, the sudden appearance of specific insects, even the way birds call out, it all signals that the soil is warm to just the right temperature. That patience pays off. Tomato seeds can technically sprout at 50 degrees, but they won't thrive until the soil is at least 60. Plant them too early and they just sit there, defenseless against rot, pests, and the cruel whims of nature. And when the time finally comes, it's all about precision. Every single seedling is planted by hand, carefully placed into the soil by someone who actually feels the dirt, senses its moisture, and adjusts accordingly. Hit a patch of compacted earth? They'll move the plant. Find a hidden rock? It's out of there. Machines can't do that. This is old school farming at its finest. There's a reason an old Amish saying goes, "The best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow." It means that no store-bought fertilizer can replace the power of observation. Watching the plants, understanding them, knowing what they need before a problem even starts. That's the real secret to a thriving garden. One of the most important tricks? Planting deep. Unlike most plants, tomatoes can grow roots along their stems, and Amish farmers use this to their advantage. Instead of just sticking the seedling in and calling it a day, they bury the plant deep, sometimes even laying it sideways in a trench, leaving only a few inches exposed. It might seem strange, but this encourages an enormous root system, giving the plant the strength to pull in more water, absorb more nutrients, and grow the kind of massive tomatoes that make jaws drop. But it's not just about where the plant goes, it's about what goes with it. The Amish don't rely on synthetic fertilizers or store-bought solutions. Instead, they turn to natural soil boosters, things you wouldn't expect to make a difference but absolutely do. Crushed eggshells go into the planting hole to add calcium, preventing the dreaded blossom end rot. Bone meal supplies phosphorus, strengthening those deep-growing roots. Wood ash adds potassium and gently raises the soil's pH, ensuring the plant gets exactly what it needs. These simple additions transform an ordinary patch of dirt into a powerhouse of nutrients. Then there's spacing, a make-or-break factor in growing those enormous envy-inducing tomatoes. Most gardeners cram their plants close together hoping for a bigger harvest, but that's not how the Amish do it. They give their tomato plants room to breathe, sometimes spacing them up to 4 feet apart. Sounds excessive? Not when you understand the strategy. More space means better airflow, reducing disease. More sunlight reaches every leaf, supercharging photosynthesis. And most importantly, those roots have an all-you-can-eat buffet of soil nutrients. Instead of pumping out a dozen tiny, unimpressive tomatoes, each plant focuses its energy on a few massive, high-quality fruits. It's a quality over quantity game, and it works. They don't stop there. Companion planting is another layer of Amish wisdom, and it's like playing chess with nature. Basil grows near the tomatoes, confusing pests with its strong scent. Marigolds line the edges of the garden, their roots releasing chemicals that ward off soil-dwelling threats. Nasturtiums act as decoys, drawing aphids away from the prized tomato plants. Every plant has a purpose, and together they create a natural defense system. Some Amish farmers even take things a step further, following the moon's phases to determine when to plant. It might sound superstitious, but many believe planting during a waxing moon, when the moon is growing, encourages stronger leaf and stem growth, while a waning moon, when the moon is shrinking, promotes better root development. Whether it's science or tradition, one thing's for sure: it's been working for generations. This entire process, from careful timing to deep planting, from natural fertilizers to strategic spacing, sets the stage for something extraordinary. It's not about shortcuts or quick fixes. It's about patience, knowledge, and working with nature instead of against it. But here's the thing: no matter how perfectly a tomato is planted, none of it matters without the right watering strategy. Too much water? The roots drown, the leaves wilt, and disease spreads like wildfire. Too little? Growth stalls, and the plant struggles to survive. Finding the perfect balance isn't just important, it's everything. So how do the Amish ensure their tomatoes get exactly what they need? Amish watering wisdom for perfect tomatoes. Water makes up more than 95% of a tomato's weight, which means getting the watering just right isn't just important, it's everything. Too little, and those promising green orbs will stay small and tough, never reaching their full juicy potential. Too much and they'll split, rot, or become magnets for diseases that can wipe out an entire crop. It's a balancing act that trips up many gardeners, but the Amish have perfected it with time-tested techniques that keep their tomatoes thriving season after season. At the heart of their success is rainwater harvesting. Instead of relying on municipal water, which often contains chlorine and other chemicals that can disrupt the delicate balance of soil microbes, Amish farmers collect rainwater in massive barrels and cisterns. A single inch of rain on a 2,000 square foot roof can yield over 1,200 gallons of water. Multiply that by the 40 inches of rain many Amish regions receive annually, and it's clear they're working with an abundant natural supply, all without ever touching a faucet. But having water isn't enough, it has to be delivered the right way. This is where the Amish take a simple yet highly effective approach: drip irrigation. While many modern gardeners rely on sprinklers that waste water through evaporation and runoff, Amish farmers use gravity-fed drip systems to deliver moisture directly to the base of each plant. Sometimes this is as simple as strategically placed buckets with tiny holes punched near the bottom, allowing water to seep into the soil slowly and steadily. This method can be up to 90% more efficient than traditional sprinklers, ensuring every drop reaches its intended target. Timing is just as crucial as technique. Amish farmers water their tomatoes at the break of dawn when the air is cool and the ground can soak up moisture before the sun intensifies. This early morning ritual serves two purposes. It allows the roots to absorb water without stress, and it gives the leaves time to dry out before nightfall, reducing the risk of fungal diseases. Watering in the evening may seem convenient, but it often leads to lingering moisture on leaves, creating the perfect breeding ground for blight and mildew. Then there's the golden rule: water the ground, not the town. Instead of spraying water over the entire garden, where much of it will evaporate before ever reaching the roots, Amish farmers make sure that moisture stays at soil level. This targeted approach keeps the plants hydrated without wasting resources, ensuring tomatoes get exactly what they need, when they need it. Mulching plays a major role in this process as well. Thick layers of straw, hay, or shredded leaves blanket the soil, acting as a moisture-retaining barrier. This simple technique can reduce the need for irrigation by up to 50%, keeping the soil damp and cool even during the hottest summer days. It also prevents the rapid evaporation that can leave plants parched between waterings. When it comes to knowing how much water to use, the Amish don't rely on schedules or complicated tools, they rely on their hands. A simple finger test is their go-to method. They stick a finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it's dry, it's time to water. If it's still moist, they leave it alone. This intuitive approach prevents both overwatering, which can suffocate roots, and underwatering, which can lead to weak, struggling plants. Consistency is the real key to growing massive, flavorful tomatoes. Instead of drenching the plants sporadically, the Amish maintain a steady level of moisture, typically around 1 to 2 inches of water per week, whether from rain or irrigation. This prevents the frustrating cycle of drought and flood, which can cause fruit to crack or develop blossom end rot, a condition where tomatoes turn black and inedible at the bottom due to inconsistent calcium absorption. As the season changes, so do the watering strategies. In the spring, Amish farmers give their tomatoes just enough moisture to encourage deep root growth. When the plants enter their main growing phase, water levels increase to support fruit development. But as harvest nears, some growers actually reduce watering slightly, concentrating the flavors and sugars in their tomatoes for a richer, more intense taste. And sometimes water does more than just hydrate, it feeds. Foliar feeding, where a diluted nutrient solution like compost tea or fish emulsion is sprayed directly onto the leaves in the early morning, gives plants an instant nutritional boost while they wait for slower releasing soil amendments to kick in. Even in drought years, the Amish find ways to keep their crops alive. They employ clever conservation techniques like basin irrigation, creating small depressions around plants to trap water, and watering at night to reduce evaporation. They don't rely on luck or assume nature will be kind. They prepare for tough times long before they arrive. There's an old Amish saying, "The best fertilizer is water." No matter how rich the soil is or how carefully a plant is tended, if it's not properly hydrated, it won't thrive. Water unlocks the nutrients already present in the earth, allowing tomato plants to reach their full potential. Strong stems, deep green leaves, and fruits so plump they seem ready to burst. The Amish don't rely on high-tech gadgets or complex irrigation systems. They rely on patience, observation, and the simple wisdom that nature provides all the tools necessary for success, if only one learns how to use them. Their approach to growing tomatoes isn't just about farming, it's a lesson in working with the natural world instead of against it. The secret to Amish tomato growing success isn't a mystery. It's a masterclass in patience, precision, and working with nature instead of against it. Every drop of water is used wisely, every technique honed through generations of trial and error. It's proof that sometimes the simplest methods yield the most extraordinary results. If there's one lesson to take away, it's this. When it comes to growing tomatoes, consistency, care, and a little old-fashioned wisdom go a long way. And that's the Amish secret to growing giant, flavorful tomatoes. From drip irrigation to smart watering techniques, their methods prove that working with nature always pays off. Have you tried any of these techniques in your own garden? What's your go-to watering method? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.